There we go. So welcome to the show, everyone. This is Trucking with Authority. I'm your host, Kenny Long, and for the next hour, consider me your navigator on your journey to success in business, especially the trucking business. We can talk about anything here on the show tonight, from getting started as a driver, buying a truck, leasing to a carrier, leasing to a new carrier, getting your own authority, hauling freight under your own numbers, record-keeping requirements, insurance requirements, dealing with the FMCSA. Of course, there's some new regulations that have been passed down from there as well. You name it, this is the show for you, and we can discuss it here. Call the number at your bottom of your screen, 917-889-9924. 917-889-9924. We're going to throw this disclaimer out before we kill anybody out there. If you are driving and you are watching this video on YouTube or on Facebook, please stop the video and call the phone number 917-889-9924. You can listen live on the phone. If you'd like to join in, add any questions or comments, go ahead and press number 1 from the phone call and we can bring you on the air. Elizabeth is in the other room screening calls. Looks like we have a lot of callers on the line already. We already have some hands raised. It sounds like this will be an entertaining night. A lot of stuff to get covered. Freight rates have been through the roof. I talk about that nearly every week now. We actually set new records again, new records this past week, week ending this past Saturday. New records show flatbed set new records, and van has inched up again after holding steady for several weeks. So we're seeing numbers that, again, we haven't seen in a long time. And it's exciting. It's fantastic news if you are in the freight market, if you are a driver, if you are a carrier, and it's good news if you are a broker as well, because if you are a good broker and you know how to make the sales, you know how to negotiate, you know how to take care of both the trucks and your shipper customers, there is money for everybody in this market. Contrary to popular belief, the brokers, the bad brokers are struggling right now, but the good brokers are still making it, and the good brokers are the ones the trucks like to work with. They're the ones the shippers like to work with. There are good brokers out there, and of course there are the brokers that are still learning this business, just like there are still drivers and carriers that are learning this business. It all comes down to negotiation. That's what I want to talk about tonight. You know, I talk about the Facebook groups. You know, I've got Trucking Rates and Lanes. It's one of the biggest Facebook groups out there, moderated. We let you have your own opinions. We let everybody say their piece. We don't censor anybody. We're not trying to protect sponsors. We're out here to try to educate and help everyone. And with that being said, a lot of comments slip through the cracks that maybe shouldn't. And a lot of comments recently have really caught my attention. There's a lot of attitude out there about screw the brokers. They raked us over the coals for the past couple of years when things were slow. Now that things are in our favor, screw them. We don't care about the brokers. We don't care about our customers. It's all about me, me, me. Screw them, pay me. And it's fun. I'll give you that. It's a fun attitude to have. It's exciting right now to be a carrier, to be a driver, to have that kind of leverage. It really is. I'm not going to lie. It's a fantastic market to be in. But as I already said, there's money to be made for everybody, and it's not about screwing the other guy. It's about a win-win negotiation for everyone. And I promise you that if you can master the art of a win-win negotiation, you will be extremely satisfied with your own rates today, tomorrow, and going forward. You'll develop relationships with brokers that will take care of you today, tomorrow, and down the road. This market is fun to be in. It's exciting. Sometimes it feels good to rake the other guy over the coals, to take advantage of the brokers or the shippers, our customers. It feels good when you have that kind of power over someone else. It won't feel so good when they remember you for that when the market turns. Now, the freight market is always cyclical. It always goes up and down. It's like a roller coaster. Of course, we are on the initial big hill of the roller coaster, and it'll be a fast drop. There is a potential for some craziness ahead. We have to be prepared for that. And if you have the attitude of screw the other guy, and if you're not paying close attention to your own business, it could hurt. So we have to be very, very careful. We already have some calls on the line. Elizabeth is in the other room screening. I'm going to let her get a couple of these calls screened, and we will get to you. Press the number on your keypad, number 1, once you're on the line. Elizabeth will take your call. This works just like a regular call-in radio show. Call the number. If you're watching the video, call the number at the bottom of your screen, 917-889-9924. We won't bring you on, and you don't have anything to worry about if you don't want to be on. You'll do what?
I'll screen in just a few minutes.
She'll be screening in a few minutes. So the call screening lines are closed, so I will just jump into taking phone calls now. I do have some stuff that I really wanted to cover tonight, but let's get some of these questions, because people had their hand raised before we even went live tonight. So let me jump down and just jump right into some of these calls. I'm going to call you out by your area code first. Make sure I got the audio set here. I had a little difficulty in the beginning, so we're going to go to the 336 area code. 336. What's your name? Where are you calling from? And what's on your mind? Hey, David. Fantastic. What's on your mind? How can we help you? Okay, sure. Well, you have a DOT number. Do you have your insurance now? Okay, so you have a DOT number, and if you've got your insurance now, depending on the state, you should be able to go down and get your plates now, because you don't need an MC number to actually have plates. So they may ask for the DOT number that you currently have, and you should be able to register your truck now. UCR also, you should be able to go ahead and pay your UCR fees. Now, with the dismissed application, all you'll need to do is contact FMCSA. It'll take a written letter. Go ahead and write them a letter. You can fax it back to them and ask them nicely just to reinstate your application. Once you do apply for your insurance, it'll go through, and your 10-day waiting period is already completed, and it'll be almost immediate. Okay, so no, go ahead. Oh. Correct. Okay, so lettering on the truck, you hit it right on the head. The legal name, exactly how you have it spelled with FMCSA. So for my company, Patriot Star, originally it was Patriot Star Incorporated. The whole word incorporated was spelled out. So on my first truck, it still has the name on there. It still says Patriot Star Incorporated. That entire word is listed on the truck. Now, I changed it later, and I filed a DBA and took the word incorporated off. So now it's just Patriot Star. So my trucks now just say Patriot Star. But if you have LLC, Inc., Incorporated, the exact spelling, the exact way that you have it punctuated and everything, even to the point that if you have a comma, if you have Patriot Star, comma, Incorporated, you should technically have that comma on there. Now, I don't know how particular that DOT officer might be, but that's the way it's supposed to be. Now, you do have to have the US DOT number. It has to say US DOT followed by that number. It can't just say DOT. It can't be just the number itself. US DOT followed by that number. Now, every state will recognize that number. So that's all that you actually have to have. You should also have a unit number, because when you do get registrations, your registration will have a unit number, and it should correspond to what's on your truck. but that's it. Now, a VIN number is handy. A lot of people will put a VIN number typically just on the passenger side, and the only state that really looks at that is the state of Colorado. Colorado, as you pull into the port of entry, the first scale you go through, they'll pull you through, take a look at that VIN number. They look and see where the truck has been registered in the past, who it's registered to now. If it doesn't match who it's registered to now, your first trip through, they're probably going to flag you around back, and they're going to ask for your paperwork. If you don't put a VIN number on there, they're going to do that every single time you go through the state of Colorado. Otherwise, you don't need it. If you never go out to that state, it's not necessary. That's really the only state that requires it, and it's not even required, it's just convenience. The last 8 digits. The last 8 digits. Now, the location is not required. Not required at all. You do not have to put city and state, although many people do, and there may be some places that, jurisdictions and so forth, depending on where you live, or if you want to run. I need to double check and see if some of the Canadian provinces require that. I know, but in the U.S., it is not required to have the city and state at all. Not required. Anywhere you like. It can be anywhere you like. Most people put it on the hood. I have some of my trucks have it on the front of the hood, some on the back of the hood, some down near the fender. A couple of them have it underneath the door. You can put it anywhere you like, just as long as it's numbered. And really, I don't know that they really enforce it if it's not numbered. But technically, you should have a unit number. And you should also, any vehicle, now both the truck and trailer are considered a vehicle, they should all have some type of identifying unit number. Now, a lot of, I've heard different DOT officers and so forth will interpret it different ways. If you have a license plate on the truck or on the trailer, that's an identifying number. So I've heard that they will use that, although technically it's not how it's worded. So it's pretty easy to just stick some numbers on there and CYA. All right. Well, congratulations. I mean, now is an awesome time to be getting your own authority. I mean, I can't think of a better time. Rates are through the roof. Let me leave you with a little bit of warning with that. It's easy right now to get your own authority. It's easy to make a lot of money in this business. Put that money away. Don't get used to it. Obviously, it's going to be a change in what you're used to. You're probably going to see an increase in revenue, but you're also going to see some increases in expenses. Don't let any of that get away from you. Don't let any of the big money, the big checks get to your head, because just as fast as it comes into your hands, it will flow back out. Believe me. I love Wednesdays, because Wednesday is the day that I have to run payroll. It's the fattest day of the week in my bank account. On Thursday, that money comes out of my bank account. I hate Thursdays. I'm really happy for all the drivers that work for me because they're all doing very well. But when that money leaves my bank account on Thursday, it's depressing, I'll tell you. But you have to stay in control of that. You're going to have huge money in and out of your accounts. Cash flow in the trucking business is one of the biggest reasons why people go out of business, because they don't manage the cash flow properly. There's a lot of ways to assist with that, but just be careful. Be extremly careful. We're going to take another call real quick.
Before you do that, no one can hear your caller when they're talking on Facebook. We can hear them on Blog Talk.
Okay. Let me see if I can fix that.
Okay.
All right. Well, let me see.
If nothing else, maybe just put your phone on speaker.
Yeah. I apologize. We were trying to do some testing before here. Let's see what I got wrong. That should do it. We'll check the next call. We'll go to the 407 area code. Oh, that's Actually, we're going to try that real quick. Let's see if we can try a test call here. Do we have anybody at the 407? I think that should be Elizabeth. I can hear me. She's not a very good call screener. There we go. Well, let's see. Let me try this. I can hear you. Let's try that. Uh-oh. I can hear you, but apparently that's not getting out either. Just a moment. One more thing that we can try. Let's go with that. Try it one more time. And this is why we have to do testing prior to the show. We're going to try this one again. No, hold on 1 minute. Bear with us, everyone. We're having technical difficulties. I'm sure if you're on Facebook, you're scratching your head wondering what's going on. What's weird is everybody can hear me, but can't hear this caller. All right, everyone. Looks like we can't take phone calls. What a shame. All right. Try this one more time.
If you use this phone on speaker, would that help?
I apologize, everyone. This is really frustrating. My assistant was on the phone before this. We couldn't do any test calls, so. All right, I don't have a way to make that work, so
Can you just use
I can't do that. It's not going to work, so that's it. All right, try that, Elizabeth. Again. No. Try that one more time. Okay, thinking of the problem. Just a moment. Try that.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Is that working? Testing 1, 2, 3.
All right, I think we're good.
Jason. Okay. You can hear me on Facebook?
Yep. Okay. Whew. I apologize, everyone. Frustrating. Live radio, live. There we go. I think we're hot now. All right. So we got some other callers. If we're still hanging in there, let's go to Jason in West Virginia. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey, Jason, how can we help you? What's on your mind?
Well, in your opening statement there, you were talking about building the relationship and the brokers remembering you when you come back and when things turn down. And last week, I believe it was, or you were speaking at that Transparency 18 conference, and there was a lot of talk about app-based brokerages and doing away with the communication and everything, going to just pushing the button and commit.
Right.
Well, at that point, I no longer have a relationship with a broker. I'm just a number. And if I'm only a number, the broker's only concern about me is what is the lowest valued number he can receive.
I agree.
Because that's all he sees or has any actions with me.
I agree. So is that a question or a comment?
Such a big push for this technology. Well, both.
Okay. Well, let me address that.
There's such a big push to go to this app base.
Yes. Let me address that. I agree with that. Now, I was there, for those of you that haven't followed along, I was there on stage along with Pete Emmeheiser, who's a pretty well-respected broker in most of the Facebook groups, and Chad Boblett, who is the head of the Rate Per Mile Masters Facebook group, which is kind of similar to what I do, but we have opposing views on a lot of things. This is one of the things that we have opposing views on. He is all for the point-and-click style. You know, I'm going to name my price and click the button to accept it. There is absolutely zero negotiation with that. It's all about the lowest base, commodity-driven, and they're trying to capitalize on the commodity market of trucks. That's the goal of what they're trying to do. I completely agree with that. I mean, I completely agree that that's what they're trying to accomplish. I do not agree that that's a good thing for the industry. There is a big push for it. Now, I brought this up. I brought this up with some of the head people over at Convoy. Convoy has been, I've been in discussions with them. Now, if you follow along, a lot of these social media outlets, YouTubers, the podcasts, satellite radio shows, you have these app companies that are reaching out to them, and they're trying to get as much publicity and trying to get people talking about them, about how good it is. In my opinion, they're going to have a hard time winning me over and this show over. Now, I go against the grain in a lot of areas. This is one of them. If you haven't noticed, I'm not big on just pushing sponsors. I don't have any sponsors for the show. I've had support from other companies, but I have never taken money from anybody else. I've had people, try to give me recommendations. I've had people, push products on me and different things. Now, I'm all for trying new technology. I'm all for looking for better ways to skin the cat, so to speak. But I don't think that any of this technology, as far as the point-and-click broker, is a good thing, except for the scenarios where it is simple warehouse-to-warehouse shipments, basic stuff. And because, frankly, there's not a lot to negotiate on those anyway. There's not a lot to talk about when it's simply back up to the dock, stay in the truck. When the truck's loaded, we'll bring the paperwork out to you. For that reason, I think that will be the primary target, especially in the beginning, for most of these companies. If you look at the customers that they have, now, I already mentioned Convoy, but you've got Uber, you've got, JB Hunt is another. When they push these loads out, the way they do it is they say the pickup city, the origin, there's virtually nothing about the commodity, and they throw out a price. I don't know how anybody could quote a load or know what the price needs to be without knowing the details, without knowing the pickup time, the delivery time, the commodity, and exactly what that load is going to entail. There's just too much in the negotiation that needs to take place. Now, that works fine when it's a driver out there chasing miles. And if you've heard me talk about rates before, I'm not about chasing miles. We're not out here to make miles. We're out here to make money. The apps are trying to focus on making miles, keep the wheels turning. Because when a driver is driving, they don't have time to be on the load boards and negotiating. A lot of drivers would prefer the low-hanging fruit of a point-and-click style book your freight that way app. That's not what I want to talk about tonight. The name of this show is, negotiation, trucking negotiation, rates and lanes. And I think you need to know a little bit more about negotiation, and you need to understand how to build relationships. Now, again, I talked to the guys over at Convoy, and they said, well, in a way you do build a relationship. It's just not with a human. You don't build human relationships. What they're trying to do is develop algorithms that will say, let's say you run a certain lane all the time, and they will start to learn what lanes you run all of the time. They'll start to learn not only what lanes you run, but what rates that you will run them for. To me, that's a scary thought. Now, we'll come back to that. If you're running that lane on a regular basis and you get out of that lane, or not just that lane, but that region, and you get out of that region, and they have a load pops up that matches where your truck is, because remember, they're geo-track locating you, they can send you back to your home lane. Now, as a broker, one of the first things you learn is when you're looking for a truck, try to send that truck home. Okay, so now, Jason, you're leased to me at Patriot Star. Our home office is here in Florida. How often do you get calls that say, hey, I've got a load going down to Florida to get you home?
Yeah, 3 to 5 times a day usually.
Yeah, because they look to see where the carrier is based and say, we're going to get that driver home. Now, my response to that is, I don't have any drivers based in Florida. All my drivers are based up in the Midwest, or they're, what have you. Well, with this new algorithm technology, what they're going to be able to do is say, yeah, that carrier is based in Florida. If we have a load going to Florida, we might as well offer to them. But I see that their trucks always run the Midwest. So every time I have a load that pops up that takes them to that region where their trucks run, that's the load that we'll offer them. Since we know that, and now, again, the reason you look for a truck trying to go home, the reason you look for that truck coming back to Florida is because you think if you're sending a truck home, that's a backhaul rate, backhaul being cheaper. So a carrier that's based out of Florida that has freight out of Florida, technically, and the school of thought is probably send them down to Florida cheaper than anybody else because they have freight out. But we don't have trucks in Florida. You can use the same thought process just to send them back to the lanes and the region that they like to run. So they're trying to use this to lower the rates. Now, they might be decent rates for what you're trying to do, but ultimately they're trying to lower the rates that they have to charge the shipper. Lower rates to the shipper equate to lower rates to the truck long term. There might be a smaller profit margin to the broker in the beginning, but remember, all this is automated now. So they're taking the people element out of it. They're reducing their costs, reducing, all of the costs in between, and ultimately not necessarily passing more money onto the trucks, but charging the shippers less. That's the goal of all of this technology. So again, you don't build a relationship with that. Now, we like to be problem solvers. We got a beautiful new sign on our door in the office. It says, consider your problem solved. Because Patriot Star, we're problem solvers. We want to get out there, solve the problems for these shippers and receivers. You can't solve anybody's problems with a point-and-click app. So I completely agree with you. Now, at this Transparency 18, there was other technology. The main focus of that is blockchain. Now, blockchain technology could allow some integration with a lot of software that does what we've just been talking about, but it also may open up again, the name of the conference was Transparency 18. So it might open up more information, give more people an insight of what the problems really are. A lot of times, the reason that we have a hard time negotiating to solve a problem is because too many people are holding their cards so close to their vest that we don't know necessarily what the problem is that we're trying to solve. If we can do that, if we can open up and provide more transparency there. Now, I'm not talking about transparency with rates, but just transparency on, the commodities, the markets. If we can start seeing that, there's detention issues at certain locations, you could use some of the telematics from ELDs for that. If you can start looking at, one of the new technologies that they're using over at FreightWaves, which is who was put this conference together. They've got a new product called Sonar, and I'm going to hopefully talk about that here soon. Sonar has some technology where they can look and see how many loads are rejected. So where we can look at the DAT load board and see how many trucks are posted, how many loads are posted, and so forth, and see what the market capacity is. What if now we can look in the future and say, these are the loads that are being rejected going into a certain area. So now we know that for whatever reason, and you can dig further and figure out what the reason is, but if we know that trucks are rejecting loads going into the Midwest, which they have been over the past few weeks when we were at the conference, we can look back and see, why is that? And then you can look and see the market in the Midwest is a little bit slow. But now you know the trucks aren't going there. So if the trucks are rejecting loads going into that market, that means that market will turn around in the next couple of weeks. So it gives you a little bit more indication. Now, all of this comes together with information technology and being able to share that through this blockchain. So there are problems that can be solved by sharing more information. But remember, everybody's out to try to put more money in their pocket. The shippers, brokers, truckers, everybody's trying to put more money in their pocket. So it puts more money in our pocket if we can charge more to the brokers, charge more to the shipper. That's ultimately the goal of a carrier, but it's the goal of the shippers and brokers to try to reduce that cost. So where can they reduce it? If they can make it easier for a trucker to dispatch themselves by accepting on the app, then ultimately that saves costs for the broker, saves costs to the shipper, and the driver thinks he's happy because he didn't have to talk to anybody. So really there is an issue with the trucking industry, with the truckers, the drivers, and the carriers that get into this because they don't necessarily know how to negotiate. Some of the things that I've seen on the Facebook groups and the different forums that I've been following, there is still a huge sense of entitlement. Even some of our own guys, Jason, some of the guys in our own group, when it comes to things like detention, just there's this sense of they owe it to me. I was talking to somebody the other day that said, he got held up at a shipper for a few hours, and can we just bill the customer for our detention time because they owe it to us? Well, where does it say they owe it to us? It's not in the rate confirmation. It's not listed anywhere. It's not in writing. If it's not in writing, it's kind of hard to say that they owe it to us. You agreed to move a load. You didn't, say anything about how long it was going to take to get it there. So it's very difficult, and those types of things need to be negotiated on. They have to be touched on in the negotiation. So I completely agree. Technology can be our best friend or our biggest enemy. And it depends on the type of technology that you adopt to try to solve those problems.
The sonar is something I'm very interested in. If it would allow me access to see that this is a problem on this load, because it gives me another angle to go into a broker or a direct shipper and tell them how I can eliminate that issue to start with. And that's only going to happen through communications. Now, anything that can pull the data and provide it to me would be great.
Yes.
But we still need to communicate so we can discuss how to fix the issues that the data tells us about.
Okay, so I am going to talk more about this. I'm going to reach out to the guys at FreightWaves. I've got some connections over there and see if I can get one of them to maybe join us on a future show. I am going to experiment with Sonar a little bit. I loved what they were showing me out there. It is so full featured right now that, and I know that they're working on some different ways to break it up, maybe different levels and so forth. I was talking to them about things that they can integrate into it, or they could break out and sell us package deals. I think that there's so much, there's stuff about ocean shipping and intermodal and different segments that they break out. And some of it is too detailed for what we need. and then there's other things that are not detailed enough. And we'll do a review on this when I get into it. But they don't break out van, step deck, and van, flatbed, and reefer, because to them it doesn't matter. We're just looking at shipments moving on those lanes. If they can break it out and be more specific, then maybe it could be even more valuable. There's a lot of things that it can do. For example, there was one particular shipper that came to them and said, hey, we're having a hard time finding trucks. And it was one of these point-and-click style shippers, one of the big companies out there. And they were able to say, well, you're being held up because of dock doors 1 through 5. Now, we look at the map on this, and it's one of those facilities where they have several huge warehouses, probably thousands of doors. They were able to narrow it down, not just to what facility, but to which 5 dock doors were holding up the trucks. Because using telematics on the trucks, using, the different lanes that they were running and the different products that they were moving. So it's amazing what they can do. Now, if the technology can solve that issue, the trucks won't necessarily have to worry about charging for detention, because we can fix that ahead of time. In the short term, we just know that if we're going to pick up at those 5 doors at this particular product going to this particular location, we know that we just need to charge that detention time up front. So this type of technology will help solve problems on both sides of it. So it'll save money on the shipper side because they don't have to pay detention. They can fix their problem where they're slow loading trucks. It'll save money on the carrier side because now the truck will be freed up. We don't have to worry about fighting for detention. So those types of things help a lot. So having that information it's a key to a good negotiation. You understand the problems that you're getting into.
Yeah, I mean, that is really going to be interesting when we do start learning more of it and have more access to it.
It really is. And, being able to tie in, everybody's on an ELD now. That was one of the things that, now, at this event, there were about 800 or so attendees, and there were only about 90 drivers and carriers total there. So it was less than, it was right in that 10% of us were drivers. The rest were brokers, technology companies, shippers, and so forth. So less than 10% of the market was represented as a driver. So it was kind of interesting to hear the other side of it. So with that, Jason, I'm going to put you back on hold. I did want to discuss, we had the technical issues here, so I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this conversation tonight. Again, really want to focus a little bit on negotiation. That was a good preface to the reason why. Call the number at the bottom of the screen, 917-889-9924. The phone lines are working now. I've done my negotiation presentation before on the show. I want to go over some of the more specific parts of it. I talked about how a lot of the books that you read out there focus on different parts of the negotiation. Some of them are very broad overview. It's just a concept, like what is negotiation? Some of them are, just how to persuade or, make the negotiation, the whole transaction go somewhat in your favor, how to just keep the flow moving in your way, more of the techniques. And then some of them just cut right to the point. And how do you haggle over the dollar? How do you, the like hand-to-hand combat tactics? I've talked about that before. And really the concept of a negotiation, like the reason that we negotiate, we're simply trying to solve a problem. That's all we're trying to do. Now, the problem is you have freight that needs to go from point A to point B. Ultimately, that's the only problem we have to solve. And then there are all of the other issues that come up along with that. Appointment times, the weight, the type of commodity, securement issues. Does it need to go in a van or a flatbed or a step deck? What type of equipment do you need? All of those little issues. But ultimately, all we're trying to do is get this freight from point A to point B. All the other stuff is just the details. So everybody goes into this negotiation knowing the only thing you know when you pick up the phone and you call a broker or a shipper, the only thing you know is you're just calling to say, we're going to move this load from point A to point B. Until you make that phone call, you don't know anything else. You don't know ultimately what you're trying to overcome. So when you first pick up that phone, you have a position in your mind of, ideally, I'm going to get $10 a mile, and ideally, I'm going to load it in my van trailer. I don't have to worry about any securement. I'm going to drive it to the other end. It won't even be a pothole in the road, and I will unload the freight on the other end, and it'll be done. Ideally, that's my position. That's the best way to solve this problem of getting freight from point A to point B. Now, the broker or the shipper might have a different position going into this. I need to have a strap over every pallet, and I need to have it tarped, even though it's in a van, and I need to have all this kind of stuff. That's their position. That's what they want. They want everything pad wrapped. They want every little box wrapped in its own little styrofoam blanket, okay? That's what they want. And somewhere you have to solve the problem by coming to the give and take of the negotiation of, you need this done. This is what I can provide. How can we work together to get the freight from point A to point B, because that's the problem. What is the solution to the problem? Can we come together to get that solution? That is the concept of a negotiation. That's what we're trying to do. All right, so it's important to understand that ultimately, that's the only purpose of a negotiation. That's the only thing you're trying to do. It's not about how much money you make. In your mind, that's one of your positions. I need to make a certain amount of money, but that's not what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is get the freight moved from point A to point B. That's the problem. If you can provide the best solution, you can make the most money, and you can provide a better solution than the next guy, and you can separate yourself out of that commodity market that we were talking about a little while ago. And then you get into more of the techniques of it. Now, again, the techniques are the psychology of what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep the positive momentum for the negotiation. You're trying to make sure that the other person agrees with what you're trying to do. Make them understand the value that you're bringing. Help them understand that your solution will be better than your position, will be better than their position. Or maybe they can do the same and say their position is better than your position. You can agree with that, and you can help do a little of both. It's a little bit of give and take, but it's the psychology of the negotiation that we have to focus on. Now, I should have kept Jason on because he's really good at this. It's not about necessarily what you say, but how you say it that really can change everything. One of the things that I've talked about before, as an example, is when you're talking about detention time. Detention time is one of the topics that came up this week several times, which really inspired me to do this show. And I'm going to do several shows. I'm going to start doing a negotiation tip for every show over the next few weeks. But how you say it is more important necessarily than what you say. One of the things that people tend to say when they're talking about detention time is they will say the first 2 hours are free, which is incorrect. Nothing in business is free. You don't give anything away. When you say it's free, that's a sales gimmick. So when you see Harbor Freight Tools is fantastic at this. Harbor Freight Tools makes zillions of dollars. I mean, they make a ton of money selling, let's be honest, cheap crap, okay? And that's so cheap that you can buy 2 or 3 of them and still be better off than going and buying the expensive name brand item that's of its equivalent. But because of the price point, it makes sense. If I break a tool, I will just go get another one and still come out ahead, right? But when you walk into Harbor Freight, what's interesting is they have all kinds of free stuff for you. Free. If you buy a tool, they give you a free flashlight, or they give you a free tape measure. They give it to you free. It says right on the thing it's free. But it's not free. In order to get that, you have to go there. And they know that if you go there, you're going to buy something. So they made an investment in you to get you to come in the door to buy some of their other stuff. It's not free. You had to make the investment of your time, and in order to get that item, you have to buy something else. It's not free. It's included with your time and investment in that other product. Now, the same is included with detention. Your first 2 hours are not free. They're included. It's important to know that nothing is stated anywhere that it has to be 2 hours. It could be nothing included. It could be 4 hours included. Now, what's few interesting tactics, and I've kind of started to play with some of this over the past week because, again, it's been on my mind. When you're quoting a load, tell them that there is no detention time. And they'll say, what does that mean? That means there is nothing included. When I get there, from the time I check in, I start charging you. It's not detention. This is my hourly rate. I am not including any time to load or unload. If you would like me to include time to unload or unload, I can do that as part of the line haul. How much time would you like to prepay for? If you would like 2 hours, I charge $50 an hour. It'll be an extra $100. So instead of doing this load for $900, I'm going to do this load for $1,000. And you can set that time at 0, meaning that you're going to charge from the first minute after you check in, or you can set that time at 2 hours, which is where most people are, or you can set that time at 4 hours. Now, going to 4 hours is something that a lot of people do, but it doesn't really knock the brokers off their kilter any because they think that's good. Try doing it to 0 and start explaining it, because you're going to get some pushback. I guarantee it. When you quote your next load, I'm going to encourage all of you to say, and you don't have to jump right to the point of, I'm not going to include any load or unload time. Just jump to the point and say, I will do this load for you with 2 hours to load and 2 hours to unload included in the rate for $1,000, or whatever your rate will be. I just used 1,000. It's a nice, easy, round number. I'll do this load for $1,000. And they'll say, well, that we don't pay, detention until after 4 hours. And you say, oh, that's fine. I will do this, and I will include 4 hours instead of just the 2 hours. I will include an additional 2 hours on the loading end for $1,100. We can do the whole load for you and include 4 hours for $1,100. If you start phrasing it that way, it'll start to register that time has value. I think that's where there's a disconnect in this industry, is that when you start charging retroactively and say, hey, you owe me for something from before, all of a sudden that time doesn't have the same value. But when you do it proactively and start talking about it in the initial negotiation and say it that way, I will include this time. I will include 2 hours to load, and I will include 2 hours to unload, and I will do it for this rate. After the 2 hours of my included time, my rate is $50 an hour. And they can either accept your rate or deny your rate. And it's up to you, just like they might accept your $1,000 for the line haul or deny your $1,000 for the line haul. It's up to you to decide if that's what you would like to do. Now, on the brokerage side of my business, I deal with different types of carriers. So we do some line haul, but we also deal a lot with LTL freight. On the LTL side, I guarantee you they do this every time. It's completely opposite of the line haul business. On the LTL side, they say you have 30 minutes of included time. And at 30 minutes, they don't charge extra. They leave. No questions asked. They don't even tell you. They just leave. I have had customers call me and say, hey, your truck was here and he checked in and I went back out to get him and he was gone. I said, how long was it before you went out to get him? Oh, about an hour and a half later, I went to get him. Oh, well, after a half an hour, he's gone. When you have UPS come to drop something off or pick something up from your house and you're shipping out a package, they're not going to stand there and wait 2 hours while you wrap it up and hand it to them. If it's not ready, they leave. They could wait, and I'm sure that if they had to wait 2 hours for every package that they loaded or picked up from you, their rate, instead of being, $30, $40 to ship a box, to your family in the next state over, it's probably going to be several $100s because they have to include that time. They'd have to hire more people and bring on more staff because they would have to include all of that time. The time has value. As a carrier, as a driver, we have to be proactive and discuss these rates, psychologically get people in the momentum of understanding that your time has a value and you can put the price tag on that value. I talked about how it's important to understand your daily rate and your mileage rate. So know what your cost per mile is, variable. Know what your fixed cost per day is. So you know what your bottom dollar is, what you have to get. You have to get at least this much every day. If you sit and wait today, you know if it's, you need to make at least $300 today. That means if you don't book a load today, you're sitting in Denver, you wait until tomorrow, still sitting in Denver, now you have to make $600 at a minimum today. If you couldn't do 3 yesterday, what makes you can do 600 today? But if you understand and you know the value of your time, you can make that decision. The same goes with things like detention time. Understand what the value of your time breaks out to be. Understand that when you're booking this, tell them that your time, you have included in your rate this much time for loading and unloading. Don't wait until after the fact to say that. Now, different things like your contracts and so forth, the broker carrier agreements or your rules circular, all are a fallback to this, but ultimately what really matters is when you quote a load, especially on the spot market, you have to include all of your accessorials, including detention, tarping, securement issues, layover, truck order not used. There needs to be a breakdown of exactly what's included in your rate. And they can decide if they are willing to pay it or not. Now, the other side of that is, remember, we're communicating. If you lay that down and say, I'm going to include 2 hours for loading and unloading, and it's whatever your rate is, $100 an hour after that, if they flinch at that and say, I can't do $100 an hour, now you have more than just money to negotiate on. You can also say, well, how long will it take to load or unload? Oh, well, I mean, they should get you out within 2 hours. Okay, well, so now you have an option. I can either include 2 hours and still do it for that same $1,000, or I can include 4 hours, but now I'll have to do the same load for $1,100. Or you have the option, I'll include the 2 hours and you can just pay me $50 an hour thereafter. Or they might kick that back and say, well, we can't do that. We don't want to do that. Find out why. Well, you just told me now that this broker is going to take this shipper rather, is going to take a long time to load me. So now you have more information to go on. Or you at least find out that they don't really know how long it'll take, and that's good information to know as well. But trying to include that instead of assuming that everybody knows. My driver, Chris, is the one that kind of said this. I think he's on the line right now. He's the one that said something along the lines of, if I call my cable company and install cable for $100 a month because that's what the commercial says, and then I get my first bill and it's $250, they can't do that. Well, they can't do that unless it's in writing first. If you go back and read the small print, it's the same with us. We can't do the same thing. We can't go to a shipper and say, we're going to move this load for you for $1,000, and then they load us and we get on the way, and then we want to retroactively bill them $1,500 because they held us up. Unless you told them what the price would be if they held you up, you can't expect them to pay for it. So it's a fine line, but it all comes down to the art of negotiation and understanding how to use this and say this the right way to get more information and help solve that problem and make sure it's win-win for everybody. All right. We are getting close to the top of the hour, so I'm gonna blow through this a little more. Again, if anybody has any questions or comments, anything that you'd like to add to this, go ahead and press number 1 on your keypad. If you're watching the video, 917-889-9924. I'm going to take calls until the top of the hour here. We're 5 minutes to 8 on the East Coast. I'm going to take calls. You can get your calls in for the next 5 minutes. Then I will try to get a few of the questions in, but no guarantee that I'll be able to wrap things up on the comments from Facebook. All right, so it's important to keep psychology. Remember, psychology is everything. The other important thing to understand, and it goes back to why psychology is everything, everybody has their own personality traits, their own profile of how they respond to different things. And it all goes back to their instinctual responses. Everybody's got the Myers-Briggs test, if anybody's taking that personality test, you'll break it down and understand what type of assertiveness traits you have, or defensiveness, or protective traits you have, and talkative and outgoing traits, those types of things. Everybody has a certain combination of that. Understanding how to respond in kind. People like to work with people they like. So if you get somebody that's a chatterbox and talks a lot, they love to have somebody that listens and and tells them that they're listening. Oh, that's great, fantastic. I'm glad you had such a great time at that event, or you did this, or you did that. They want to make sure that you're happy listening to their stories. They like to talk to people that like to listen to them talk. Make them feel that way. Doers, somebody that's just straight and to the point, wants to get the job done. They don't care. They don't want to hear it. They just want to get right to the point. So don't ramble on about anything else. Just get the job done, because that's what the doer wants. But ultimately, matching that person's attitude and that instinctual bit of their social profile, so to speak, is the best way to get them to like you and to be able to keep that psychology moving in the right direction. And remember that everybody's out here to make a buck. And it always goes back to fighting, feeding, fleeing, and fornication. And that last one is super important. So everybody's feeding. We're out here to make a buck. We're all trying to put food on the table. That's the whole point of what we're doing, which is why so many people go into a negotiation only focused on the money, and they forget about the problem of moving the freight. If we can focus on the problem of moving the freight, the money will come. But if you lose focus on the problem and you're only focused on feeding, on the food in front of you, you're liable to miss out on a lot of opportunities. That feeding process is super important to understand, that you have to overcome that. Fighting, that's another one. If you go into negotiation combative, and a lot of people are doing this right now with brokers. This is one of the traits that's coming out, lizard brain style, the instinctual style of, I'm going to win. I don't care. It's all about me, me, me. I'm more important than the broker or the customer, the shipper. It's me, me, me. I'm going to fight and win. That fighting process, people don't like to deal with people they don't like. I'm not going to give you extra money if you're going to be combative with me. I'm not going to do it happily. I might do it because it's my only choice. But I'm going to remember that the next time I go to deal with you, and I won't do it the next time. We're trying to build relationships here. It's important to build relationships. That always brings people to the next one. If I can't get the money that you want, if I can't pay it, or you don't want to get it, somebody is going to run. Somebody's going to hang up the phone on somebody else. We're not going to fight over it. We're just going to leave. So feeding, fighting, and fleeing. I'm getting out of here. The last one, fornication, again, is super important. I guarantee you that a male talking to a female gets different results than two males or two females. It's a different chemistry. And I don't care how many politicians or how many people want to protest it. Males and females are different. That's just a fact. There are different needs, different attitudes, different styles of negotiation, different personalities, and it all does matter. That male versus female chemistry, male and male chemistry, it does make a difference. So it's important to understand that it makes a difference. And how you get a reaction from that will change the outcome of your negotiation. I've got a whole list of notes here, but I'm going to skip through some of it because I'm going to leave some of these talking points for some future shows. When I put on our conference last October, the drive, and I am in the process of planning something else here in the near future. Stay tuned for that. But when I put that on, I had a sales trainer come out. He talked about sales, how to sell, make the big sale. If you're a carrier and you're looking to get direct shippers, that was the guy for you. I also had I was up there and I talked about negotiation, freight negotiation, the one-on-one combat with dealing with a broker. Then my father-in-law was on, and he was talking about communication and building an analog relationship in a digital world. All three of us were really talking about negotiation and really talking about communication and really talking about building that relationship, even though we all had our separate reasons for doing it. What was interesting was, and I have this picture on my screen here, I wish I could show it now. What's interesting is all three of us had this exact same picture in our slideshows. It's a picture of a bridge in the sunset, a golden bridge. And the point that we all have to do is, and my biggest takeaway from that event, I learned something from everybody else there as well. We're not trying to make a sale. If a broker posts a load on a load board, or if the broker calls you, they're already sold. They're already a buyer. We're not trying to sell them at that point. They're already ready to spend the money. All we have to do is facilitate that sale. We have to make them want to buy from us and build that golden bridge. We want them to cross that bridge because they want to, because they know that we have the best solution to their problem, and they know that they can trust us to solve that problem for them. That's really our goal. They can find a truck anywhere. We have to make sure that they are happy with the purchase that they're making. And then finally, and we are at the top of the hour, I'm going to go back to this one, which I talk about quite a bit. And Jason, who's still on the line here, tells me that this bit of advice is his biggest takeaway of what I've taught him and from podcasts and from the event and everything else. And he cusses me for it all the time because it never works for him. And it's the Japanese no. Now, in Japan, in the Japanese language, there are hundreds or thousands of words that mean yes, that translate directly into English as yes. But there is nothing that translate exactly to the word no. Now, the Japanese people are very proud people, and it's insulting to just flat out say no. So they don't even do it. What they do is they say yes with terms that are so big that you could never possibly agree to it. In other words, if somebody throws something out and it's a load that you just don't want to do, give them a solution, even if it's a bad solution. Even if you know that they're not going to take your offer, it's still better than saying no. So if it's something that's a freight shipment going across the country, your business model doesn't take you east or west of I-35, and you would never take something to the West Coast, offer them some crazy number, $11,000, and see what happens, because they're not going to take it. In Jason's case, they end up taking that stuff. I've told the story before. I've got another Jason that works for me, and he was in Pennsylvania on a Friday, and his business model is on the weekends. He tries to take something longer, picks up on Friday, doesn't deliver till Monday, hoping to capitalize on those extra miles and make extra money. And he found himself in Pennsylvania, and it was 300-something miles on this load up into Massachusetts. And he kept telling the broker, no, I don't want to do it. I'm looking for more miles. I want more miles for the weekend. He never gave them a solution. He never said, I will do it, but it'll take this. So eventually, Jason called me and said, I don't know what is wrong with this broker. They've called me 10 times. I keep telling him no. I said, are you telling him no, or are you giving them a Japanese no? He said, what do you mean? I explained what a Japanese no is. So he turned around. The next time they called, he said, I'll do it. It's 300 miles, but I'm going to need $4,000. And sure enough, they hemmed and hawed over it for a minute, and they didn't have another choice. And they said, we really don't want to, but I appreciate you giving us the offer. I appreciate you solving the problem for us. We don't have anybody else that can do it. I will give you that money. I will give you the $4,000 or whatever it was, $3,500 or whatever it was. But in Jason's mind, he was saying, no, I'm not going to do this. He had already said no. He actually literally said, no, I'm not interested in this load. He said it 10 times before that. And then he gave him the Japanese no and said, no, I will do it, but it's going to cost you more than you're willing to pay. They turned around and said, no, we're willing to pay that. We'll do it. And he was shocked. That Japanese no is probably the most important thing that one of the most important tactics. If there's something that you don't want to do, give them an offer. Always solve the problem. Be the problem solver. All right, we've got one last phone call with the hand raised. We're going to go ahead and take this one, and then we will wrap things up for the night. We're going to go to the 206. Welcome to the show. Caller at the 206 area code. Are you with us? One more minute. 206 area code. Going once.
Hey, Kenny, it's James. How you doing?
Fantastic. What was your name and where are you calling from and what's on your mind?
James calling from, I'm in the middle of Montana right now.
Oh, okay. Hey, James, how are you?
I'm doing well, but I didn't realize that Elizabeth wasn't screening, so.
Yeah, we were having some technical difficulties a little while ago, so we got it straightened out, though.
No, my question is nothing related to negotiation. It's related to drug test, drug consortium, and somebody who tested positive on a pre-employment and kind of what to do with that.
Gotcha. Did they test positive under you?
No.
Okay, so they tested positive for another company. Are they trying to get a job with you?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so there is a procedure for this. They have to undergo training. There's a class that they're going to have to take. It's going to come with some stipulations if you do decide to hire them. Now, it is up to you. You are within your rights not to hire them. But if you do decide to hire this person, you're going to have to do more frequent than random drug testing. It's going to have to still be random, but it's going to have to be depending on the stipulations that they have. And I don't remember offhand if it's a federal requirement or if it's a case-by-case basis on the minimums. It's either monthly or quarterly. They have to be tested every single time at random. And I want to say in the beginning it's monthly. Every 30 days they have to be drug tested, which can be expensive for you unless it's somebody that you can back charges to. And it's also very time-consuming and frustrating for you. So that's one process. Yeah. They're going to have to go through a substance abuse program that meets the DOT specifications and requirements. After that, if you do hire them for the first, I believe it's a year, they have to be tested pretty frequently. And you have to make sure that it's separated out from the rest of your group.
Okay. I'll reach out to our group administrator, or the bigger group we're under, and get some more from them then.
Yeah, that's where you start. Personally, I don't know if it's worth it. I mean, if it's somebody you're trying to do them a favor, I don't think. I mean, there's a lot of companies that would never touch a driver that had failed a test like that before. If you want to take that risk, I can pretty much assure you that your insurance company is not going to like you for it. You're going to have to put some serious, strict rules in place and make sure that you adhere to them and make sure this driver does. And also remember the risks that you're taking. If for some reason, and it might be 5 years down the road after all this, testing and this program is behind you, and this driver, accidentally falls off the wagon and kills somebody, and you hired them knowing that they had this issue, you could go to jail over it.
Oh. All right. Well, that answers part of that question then.
Yeah. I mean, it's risky, and I understand that, everybody makes mistakes, but you really have to weigh, as a business owner, how much risk are you willing to take?
It's the issue is wearing an owner's hat, I would not have been privy to the fact that he had failed it. Wearing a friend hat and an acquaintance of a friend, I know he failed it, so I don't know where to play with that one.
Well, I would be a friend on your own time. How about that? And believe me, I struggle with this too from time to time. I've gone back and forth over different people that we've hired in the past for, different, opinions of friends and different things like that. In some cases it makes sense. In other cases, you got to go back to your business owner. What decision would you make if you didn't know this person? And, it could cost.
Well, and I guess my other question is, how would I, as a business owner, if I didn't know this beforehand, if this guy just filled out an application and he never put this place that he went to for orientation down, how would I know that it's there, that he failed one?
Okay, if somebody fails a drug test, it gets recorded, and when you do their background check, it should be recorded. Now, their license should have been suspended from it, or their when you pull their PSP or their MVR, you should see some kind of signals for this. And certainly when you do their background checks, it should come up. Even if they don't give that employer to be on the to be a federally approved consortium, then they have to follow certain reporting procedures, which means that that's going to come up.
Okay. Where does it get? What? I must be missing something in my background checking. Where would I be going for that information?
Okay, you're going to check with all the previous employers first, obviously.
Yep.
You're going to check with if they fail one, your consortium is supposed to report that to the DOT. It's supposed to be reported that they failed one. And they are not allowed to drive until they've gone through that. Even if they stayed with that same company is not required to fire them. Okay, that same company could hire them. They'd have to go through that process first of the substance abuse program and the frequent testing and so forth.
Okay.
And I'm sorry I don't have more specific details, but that
because as a carrier who would has an application and they put that they don't put down that they failed that, or they don't put down that they went to orientation but never got hired, how would I find that out in a background check?
Well, that's going to come up in a background check.
I don't know what I'm looking for.
If you do a thorough background check, you're going to pull their MVR and their PSP, and that stuff. Some of that stuff's going to come up right there. And when you do,
is there a service that you use that does a different the rest of the background?
Let me give you a tip, a suggestion. There's a company online that I have been looking at called Driver Files Online. Driver Files Online they're actually fantastic. They have everything from a DOT compliant application. All of the driver files are kept. They do the annual motor vehicle checks and reviews for you. All of that is included. They're going to pull your driver files, do the background check. They're going to do all of the above. And it's fairly inexpensive on a per driver basis. So that's one place that you can check. There are a lot of services out there that can do that. Now, when you do this check on your own, and you do the previous employment checks, that's the first thing you're going to do. If they don't list it, you're going to pull their PSP and their MVR. Something's going to come up there as well.
Yep.
And when you go to do your drug test, you got to make sure that that's all completed properly as well. Now, I should have this information handy and in front of me, but I apologize, I don't. If you go to FMCSA and you do the search for the requirements for the drug testing program, have you done the classes, the supervisor classes that are required?
Yes, to be certified to do the collection and all that stuff.
No, not to be certified to do the collection, but and I'm assuming you did that through NASTIC?
Yeah.
Okay, so the NASTIC's class should have covered this, but there is a video, and it doesn't cost anything. Anybody that has employees is supposed to go through this course. FMCSA has it, and you watch the video, and to be certified and qualified to oversee a drug testing program, even though you hired NASTIC to be the consortium that you're a part of, you also, to be a supervisor and to understand how the notification process works and how the background process works, you have to take that class. Now, the class can be found, the video and stuff that's required can be found for free through FMCSA. And if you check out the resources they have there, I'm sure that you're going to find the answers to these questions as well. And I will look these up myself, and I will double check all of the answers, make sure that I'm not off pace with this one.
Okay. No, I was going through all my documentation and program handbook and everything. It's just figured you may have come across this and might be able to help in the right direction.
Yep, and that's where I would look. Go to the FMCSA and just do a search for the drug testing requirements, and you're going to find the video I was talking about. Okay. You're going to find all the resources and how you do those background checks there.
Okay.
All right.
I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, James.
Thanks
for the call. Put you back on hold. Okay, we have several callers on the line, but I am going to cut off the phone lines for now. You can still listen in. Got a couple more comments from Facebook. I want to scroll up here. All right, so we were talking about negotiation. Doug wrote, I don't know, as much time as you waste on the phone with most brokers trying to lowball you and have running for pennies, some are not worth negotiating with. So I'm assuming that what you're talking about, Doug, is you would prefer to just have a point-and-click application. So my question to you is, if all of the brokers end up using a point-and-click application like that on your phone, what do you do when all of the brokers and all of the point-and-click opportunities that you have in front of you are pennies? There's nothing to negotiate with. If we got rid of all the brokers and everything was just listed, all the rates were listed, and you just had to click the button, what happens when none of them are good options? What will you do then? And I think ultimately that's what they're going for. They're trying to lower the prices. Okay, and then Dave Casanova, who was a guest last week on the show, he said Convoy wants to take control of trailer pools. That's where the revenue is. That's partially true. I think look a little bit deeper than that. Again, we talked about how this type of system works best with warehouse-to-warehouse moves. The problem with warehouse-to-warehouse moves is the loading and unloading times gets to be difficult. A lot of the big fleets have overcome that by providing drop and hook opportunities. Convoy also wants to overcome that by providing drop and hook opportunities. That's why they're doing that. What does that tell me? That tells me that their goal is to focus on the warehouse-to-warehouse commodity-driven shipper market. That's what they want. They want the easy stuff. They don't want to have problems to solve. They're not trying to solve problems. They're trying to move as much freight as possible through their app. I want to go off of that a little bit. Dave also mentioned some of the other Convoy, JB Hunt 360, some of the others, Uber, haulme.com, what are some of the other ones? Go by Truck. There are so many of these app-based companies that are popping up. Now, JB Hunt 360 is one that I think deserves a little bit of attention. All of these other apps, Uber has pretty much just completely wallpapered every truck show for the past 2 years. Matt's, Gats, for the past 2 years have been completely wallpapered with Uber material. They're spending a ton of money on different video ads, Facebook, YouTube, and so forth. They're plastering their advertisements everywhere, trying to reach their carrier base on the lowest level. They're trying to get to on our level to try to reach out to us. That is their method of trying to get their word out. They're spending a lot of time and money doing it. Convoy has been doing the same thing. There's a lot going on with Convoy. Again, I mentioned, some of the Sirius radio hosts, some of the other people that are in my position on Facebook and YouTube and so forth. They're all on board with some of those. Same thing with Uber. I mean, they're all over the place. What's interesting is that JB Hunt 360, if you take all of the others, Convoy, Uber, I mentioned a few of the others, you take all of those and combine them into one and compare them just to JB Hunt 360, JB Hunt 360, since that app was unveiled, since they went to the digital broker style app, JB Hunt 360 is currently the most successful and best of all of them. Some of you may or may not like dealing with JB Hunt. That's beside the point. That app by volume has moved more freight than all of the others combined. They're killing it. Now, Dave mentioned Convoy is trying to get a trailer pool. What is the one thing that JB Hunt already has in place? One of the largest trailer pools in the country. And they're using it in conjunction with their app. So where did Convoy get their revolutionary idea from? We'll move on. Let's see. I prefer talking to brokers opposed to accepting loads online. Gary says that. I agree. The other thing that I'm trying to teach people when I coach them on how to use the load board and take advantage of all the tools, DAT load boards, and this is, again, I mentioned Chad Boblet was at that seminar, Transparency 18. The DAT load board, and I believe Truckstop as well, they have a rate column. Now, as a broker, I can post a rate. As a carrier, when I search for a load, I can see the rate that the broker posted. I find that to be very, very backwards. If you go to take your car, your four-wheeler, to a muffler shop, and you say, hey, I want you to put this muffler on for me, you don't tell them, I want you to put this muffler on for me, I'll pay you $100. No, you take your car to the shop, they look it over and find out all the details, and they say, well, your car is going to need a new muffler, and the muffler that you need is going to be $300. And that's that. That's the cost. That's the price. And you might be able to negotiate. There's always sales. There's always things they can do. They can give you 5% off, or they can give you the AAA discount, right? Well, they can do the same thing with freight. And you can negotiate that. But you as the carrier should be providing the price. So when you look at the load boards and the broker is putting the rate out there, that is nothing but a target. They would love to move it. Brokers post rates to move freight as fast as possible for as cheap as possible. That's the point. If truckstop.com gave me the stats, a load that has a posted rate, when you do a search, the top rate moves 6 times faster than a load that does not have a rate at all. Scroll all the way down. The load that has the lowest posted rate, if it's got a rate posted, still moves 3 times faster than a load that doesn't have a rate at all. So let's look at this. If we have a list of 100 loads, only 10 of them post rates. Number 1 might post a $10,000 load. That load, I guarantee you, the phones will blow up for that broker. That load will be up there for a few seconds. Interesting thing is, 10 loads have a rate posted. Number 11 might not. What you don't know is, number 11 might be a $20,000 load. Nobody's calling on that one. And they might answer the phone and say, hey, I've got $20,000 to burn and I'd love to get to the first caller. But you won't know if you don't call them. I can also tell you that in my experience as a broker, when I post a cheap freight load, I can move it without even having to try. Absolutely move it without even having to try. I'm hoping that next week I'm going to have a call recording for you. I record all the calls coming in and out of the office. Elizabeth had a great one today, but I won't be able to access it until 24 hours later. But I'm hoping next week I'm going to be able to show you a pretty interesting call. We're a broker trying to move a load, and this carrier called, and I'm hoping I'm going to be able to share it with you all next week. Very, very interesting, the way people try to negotiate. But the point is, when you call and the only thing on your mind is that rate, I guarantee you lose more than you even realize. So when you call based on that rate posted, it's not a good thing. And then Dave and Robert said, I was talking about try to respond in kind. When people talk to you and you recognize that they're talkers or they're doers and you try to respond in the same way that they're responding to you, it's called mirroring. It's another term for it. It is a tough skill, but it's probably the most effective negotiation tactic that you can do. Neuro-linguistic programming. Yes. Meaning that the things that you say and the way you say them have a huge outcome on the the results. Got another thing that I'll try with you all next week to expand on that, neuro-linguistic programming. It's a magician's trick that really makes a point in sales and negotiation. The what you say and how you say it definitely has a huge impact on the outcome of any negotiation. CDs or DVD of the Drive conference. I had somebody that videotaped the entire thing, and we're having an issue getting the videos. But I will be trying to round those up, and I may not be able to release the entire thing, but maybe I can have some video clips that I could release. So stay tuned for that. We'll see what we can do. And I will be doing another event. We don't have dates locked in yet, but I've had a lot of calls and a big demand for it. So absolutely, we will be doing another Drive event. We lost a lot. That was our first one. We lost a lot. We learned a lot. We learned a lot on that first one. And I think we're going to really be able to turn things around. And we had a huge, I was very impressed with the first event, with the turnout we had. And I think we're going to say, we're going to really rock it this year. No, not really. I'm just saying that some brokers waste your time and are just ridiculous with some of the rates. I agree, but it's your job as the carrier to provide the rates, to explain why the rates are the way they are. And you consider it a waste of time if you'd like to, but you can either waste your time getting a good rate, or you can take the easy road and click the button, and you can work for the average rates that everybody else is getting. I prefer to spend an extra few minutes on the phone, and I'd rather waste my time on the phone and be able to hire somebody to count my money. I guess we can go that way. Negotiation on a phone call would help a lot of people. Gary, I agree. Letting others hear it would help others. I agree. That's why we have
90 seconds.
We have upgraded our phone systems to allow recording. So all the calls that come in and out of the office from anybody in the office, myself, Elizabeth, Liz, our office manager here, or our broker agent, any of us, our calls will be recorded, and there will be some doozies. There are definitely some calls that we've had that I think would be an eye-opener for a lot of people. So
60 seconds.
That being said, it sounds like we're about to wrap things up anyhow. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me again. I apologize for the technical issues that we had. I really thought we got off to a good start, and if Elizabeth didn't tell me that we had those issues, I would have just kept talking to myself. So, again, thank you for all the support, and remember, dream, aim, strategize, and earn it, because only you drive you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
And really quick, I'm still live on Facebook here. Doug says, I'm not really totally with clicking a button. Some of them just won't budge. I agree. And if they won't budge, you can just hang up. But I've got a regular carrier that takes $1.20 per mile. He fell off. We only pay $1.40 a mile. That's Dave Casanova again. You know, I'll tell a couple quick stories before I let you all go. We're kind of off the air now, so this is after hours. This is the after show, I guess. There are a lot of brokers that bid some freight before they understood the market. A lot of shippers pushed for that. A lot of shippers were trying to lock in contracts early on. They were trying to lock in contracts to extend their rates and try to weather the storm. They knew with ELDs coming in that they were going to have a problem. So back in August of last year, I started seeing RFPs, requests for proposals, or RFQs, requests for a quote. I started seeing those kind of in an off time last year. Normally they come out usually in the first quarter, and sometimes again in toward the end of the year to prep up for the first quarter.
so that you'd start the new fiscal year. Or even sometimes, you'll start seeing them in the second quarter for government contracts, so that come October 1st, you're going to have everything locked in for the government fiscal year. But what I started seeing was, like, it was weird timing last year. You started seeing stuff in August trying to lock in freight rates starting in December. Well, the other thing that was interesting in December was, of course, we were in the middle of the Christmas rush, and we also had the ELDs. So they're locking in contracts at a weird time. And if they locked in an annual contract in November of last year, rates were high, but they weren't as high as they are right now. And so they don't have the money. Literally, there are people saying that I can't pay anymore. I don't have that much in it. And they're not lying. They really don't have that much in it. And I started this show out, and I don't know if everybody heard it because of the audio issues. There are good brokers and bad brokers. A good broker makes money even if the freight rates are high. So there's money to be made by everybody. Take care of the trucks. The trucks make money, the broker makes money, and the shipper's happy with what he's paying because he's getting the service, he's getting the problem solved, and he understands the market. So it's absolutely, I understand what you're saying. They say that they just won't budge. It's because they really can't budge. The other issue is, if you're in a certain market, you have to explain to them. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I have not only tried to justify my own rates, but I have helped the broker understand the market better. And some of the brokers are my competition. I'm a broker as well. I'm a broker and a carrier. And I've explained to other brokers why the markets are the way they are, or why the rates for a certain lane need to be justified to be what they are. And, some of them say they can't move. And the other thing about that is, tell them what your rate is. Tell them why your rate is what it is. Tell them the services you offer. Explain the market. Explain what's happening. And then politely let them go and see how often they call you back. Again, give them that Japanese no. When you give them the Japanese no, you tell them, no, I can't do it for that rate, but I can do it for this rate, and see if they call you back. And a lot of times they will. And the last point here, somebody said, and I told you, I'll tell you a story. Dave Casanova said, I've got a regular carrier that takes $1. This is a broker line. I've got a regular carrier that does this run for $1.20 a mile every week. But this week he fell off. I'm willing to do $1.40. And I'm pretty sure Dave was here yesterday when he got that call. If it wasn't him, we get that call every once in a while. I think it was Dave trying to negotiate on a load from Florida to Laredo. And he says, I got a carrier that does it for cheap, and he fell off. I'm willing to do it for just a little more, but it's still cheap, when there's all kind of freight on that lane moving for a lot better, and the average is better than that. So that does happen. And I can tell you that, interestingly enough, we got a call from a direct shipper out of the Laredo, Texas market. They have routine shipments going up to a few different areas. I guess I won't get too specific on this. And I ran the rates and figured for one of the short hauls, they needed to be around $1,000. For some of the longer stuff, they needed to be at $25. For the $1,000 load, they said, oh yeah, we've been getting these done for $650 every week. And I looked at like just the spot market averages over the past 90 days have been, $750 to $1,000. And, if you need to be locked in on that, I was right in the right range. And he said, oh yeah, we had somebody for $650 every week. We're looking for something a little cheaper. We think they're really taking advantage of us. I think you're getting a killer deal at $650 a week. And the same thing with the one I was trying to quote it for around $25, and they came back and, oh, well, we've paid as much as $2,000 on this one in the past. I mean, it's really hurting us. We got to find something better. Sorry, man, this is a market you're in. But they did have one run, interestingly enough, that we looked at that, and the averages were right around the $3,000 mark. And they came back to us and said, oh, yeah, we've had to pay as much as $4,000 on this one in the past. And so basically what that tells me is they have no clue what the market is. And I don't know who the brokers or carriers are dealing with are now, but they don't apparently have a clue either, because they're way off base on every one of these lanes. I don't know. They must be, they must have tried to pair some lanes together. So they did one at $4,000 when it should have only been $3,000, but that offset this other one that should have been $1,000, but they only did it for $500 or $650. So they're trying to offset these. That being said, that in itself is a good lesson. because understanding that brokers bid package deals. It's not always a one-at-a-time shot. So we've had customers in the past. We had a retail place here in Orlando. It was local, and they moved it to two separate stores. And what they asked us was, we have this much material. What's it going to take to get this moved to the stores? They didn't say, we would like you to bid 5 truckloads. They didn't come in. They didn't even ask us how many truckloads is it going to take. They said, here's what we've got. We need to get this product moved to another location. What's it going to take? And we said, well, we can do it for, I don't remember, it was some local moves. I think it was like $3,500 or $4,000 for whatever the whole move was. But that ended up being for 6 or 8 truckloads. And we didn't break it down. We didn't bill them per truckload because they don't care. All they know is they've got a thing here that needs to be there. What's it going to take? I don't care what the logistics of it are. That's your problem. Patriot Star Logistics, we handle the logistics. They just want their stuff moved. So it's a different thought process, a different way of thinking, and a lot of drivers don't necessarily understand the bigger picture of that. And I think it would be helpful in a lot of cases for drivers to understand a little more about it. So again, some of the ways that I'd like to overcome that, I am going to do more negotiation stuff going forward. I'm going to start making a point of this. Dave has asked me to look into a certain author that I'm very interested in, and I'm going to look into that. I'm going to look into his books and see what we can do, maybe get some of that included in what we're doing. And here's another one. And this is going to go back to the call. Russell said, I had a dedicated contract, and I'm going to wrap it up with this, everybody. I had a dedicated contract run for $3.25 all miles week to week. They paid tolls in the Northeast. I got out of it before the hurricanes. Trying to make sense of this. They've been calling to find out my availability for the last few weeks. I quoted $1 more than agent's contract. They said, heck no. Monday they had a sick call. I was available. My first question was, did they agree to my rate? And the answer was yes. And so my last statement on this, and you're hopefully going to hear this next week on the phone call. Elizabeth got a call from a carrier. And it went, this is the gist of it. And again, I'm going to wrap it up. I thought this was hilarious, and I hope the phone call really reveals it. She said, hello, Patriot Star, this is Elizabeth. Said, hi, I'm calling about a load you have moving out of, I guess, Orlando or Apopka, whatever she has it listed as. And she said, yes. And he said, I will do it for $3 a mile. That's exactly what he said. I will do it for $3 a mile. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't ask anything. And Elizabeth said, you'll do it for $3 a mile? And this was a true story. I've used this as an example before. True story. He said, I will do it for $3 a mile. She said, great, we'll do it. He said, all right, what is it? Well, it's picking up here in Apopka. It's going 20 miles down the road. It was a local move. He quoted it at $3 a mile, and she says, awesome. I'm going to send the rate confirmation right now. That's a hell of a deal. So we're going to play that phone call for you next week. I thought it was funny. So, all right. I've used that as an example for people on what not to do. And sure enough, this guy did it. It was hilarious. But with that, again, everybody, I'm going to wrap this up the same way I always do. Remember, aim high, dream big, strategize your plan, and earn your success. I think I'm going to get T-shirts printed up. Aim, dream, strategize, and earn it. Because you drive you. Have a good night, everybody.